Welcome to St. Helena Parish, 1870. The sun had barely crested the horizon, yet the cotton fields already shimmered with a silver dew that clung to each stalk like tiny specters of the past. There was a hush here, the kind that presses against your ears, thick with humidity, and the scent of earth turned by countless hands. Some said it was just the mist. Some said the fields themselves were alive, whispering names carrying the sighs of those who had bent beneath the burden of labor, beneath the weight of history that did not forgive. Before we begin, leave a comment. Tell us where you're watching from, the exact time you're listening. Feel the weight of the soil beneath your feet, the chill in the air, the breath of the past moving through the fields. And remember, every story you hear tonight began long before you arrived and will linger long after, like the watcher, still walking between the rows, still counting the names that history tried to forget. The archives tell us of long days under the relentless sun of hands, blistered and backs bowed, and the small cabins lined along the edges of the plantations filled with families who clung to each other and to hope. Yet between the lines of runaway slave ads and Freedmen's Bureau reports, there are hints. Mentions of fate unknown, of workers who vanished without trace. A shadow passing through the records, a missing name on a ledger, and no explanation save rumor and fear. They whispered of the spirit who watched, not in anger, not in malice, but in a presence that bore witness, a quiet vigilance that no one dared question. The people of the parish, those who survived, those who fled, those whose stories were carried only in memory, spoke of nights when the fields seemed to breathe, when the wind carried voices faint but persistent, calling names that had not been spoken in decades. Some swore they saw a figure gliding between the rows, cloaked in the shapes of shadow and moonlight, a face half seen, eyes luminous with grief or warning gazing endlessly, as if cataloging the lives, the labor, the sorrow that passed beneath it. And if one dared look back, the chill of fear would settle in their bones, a reminder that the past was not gone. It lingered. It waited. Factlayer tells us that these plantations were the backbone of the parish's economy, cotton harvested by hands stained with toil and sweat. Census records indicate the population, the families, the hierarchy of work. Yet in the quiet corners of those records, the whispers persist. Notes in diaries, letters left unfinished, the occasional mention of someone gone missing, fate unknown. These fragments dry in official form a skeletal history, one stripped of emotion, of spirit. But folklore layer remembers differently. WPA narratives, oral histories passed from one generation to the next, speak of a watcher. Not human, not entirely spirit. Hovering at dusk, footsteps soft against the earth, a presence felt more than seen. Songs sung in the fields carried warnings, melodies that rose and fell, like the breath of someone unseen. Some believed the watcher was the soul of a foreman who had died unjustly. Others thought it the embodiment of the collective grief of the enslaved. Each account, each story, added to the tapestry of mystery that surrounded the parish, blending with the dry facts until no one could say where history ended and legend began. And so the watcher remains. In the morning haze, in the evening fog, sometimes glimpsed from the corner of the eye, the faint rustle of cotton stalks without wind, a movement where none should be. People left their cabins early, hands trembling, backs aching from the work that could never end. And sometimes in the silence between labor and rest, they felt it in awareness, a presence, watching, always watching. Records mention the names of some who vanished, noted in passing. Fate unknown scrawled beside them. Payrolls left unclaimed. Letters returned unopened. And in the folklore, the story was larger. The watcher sometimes a single figure, sometimes many, moving with the rhythm of the fields themselves. Guiding warning morning. keeping the memory of the lost alive in ways that no ledger, no archive, no official record could ever capture. It is the year 1870. St. Helena Parish, a place carved from centuries of toil and memory. The sun rises slowly over the horizon, spilling pale light across fields that seem endless, stretching in every direction, their cotton stalks heavy with dew. Each stalk sways gently in the morning breeze, a rhythm almost like a heartbeat. And yet, there is a weight here, a heaviness that hangs in the air, mingling with the smell of damp earth, of smoke drifting from distant cabins, of the sugarcane burning somewhere down the road. The land is scarred and beautiful at once. The remnants of plantations, brick chimneys blackened by fire fences, bowed and splintered paths long abandoned, mark the history of work and suffering. Here families live in cramped cabins of wood and mud, children running barefoot across the yard, their laughter fragile, carried away by the wind before it can reach the ears of those who have seen too much. The adults move with the weight of responsibility, hands calloused from years of picking cotton, from tending livestock, from mending clothing by candlelight. Their eyes are sharp, wary, because even after emancipation, freedom is an idea whispered at night, not a reality they can touch. The sounds of the parish form a symphony of survival. The crows croak from the branches of ancient oaks. The distant hammer of a blacksmith's forge rings out across the fields. Water trickles through a broken canal, and somewhere, a train whistles in the far distance, promising escape or change. Each sound layers over the next, a constant hum of life that carries history in its resonance. The wind sweeps through the cotton, and it seems to carry voices. Faint murmurs of those long gone, of ancestors whose names were never written, whose fates remain unknown. Look closer. The records tell part of the story. Census rolls list the families, the workers, the few landowners who still hold sway over the parish. Freedmen's Bureau documents note disputes over wages, land disputes, missing property. There are letters between clerks and overseers, some mundane, some hinting at something darker. One girl failed to appear at sunrise. Fate unknown, a line written in hurried ink. The night watch reported a shadow moving among the fields. These fragments, dry, official, clinical, form the backbone of what we know. But they cannot capture the tension that hung in the air, the fear that pressed against the heart. And yet, folklore fills in the spaces that history leaves blank. WPA interviews recorded decades later speak of spirits that wander the fields at night, of a watcher, a presence that bends over the cotton rows, never speaking, never touching, simply observing. Some told of lanterns flickering without wind, of soft footsteps heard in the dark, pacing in patterns impossible for the living to reproduce. Children were warned never to stray beyond the fence line after sunset. Mothers whispered caution in low tones. And even men hardened by decades of labor would pause at the edge of the field, sensing the gaze of something unseen. The parish is a mosaic of sound, smell, and shadow. The blacksmith's hammer, the scrape of a wagon wheel along dirt, the distant call of a preacher. The church bell tolls occasionally, calling the faithful to morning service. The scent of bread baking mixes with the earthiness of the fields. Dogs bark in the yards. Chickens scatter at sudden movement. Every element is alive, carrying the residue of a past that refuses to be silent. And in that chorus, the watcher moves. A presence threaded through the ordinary, felt in the tilt of a stalk, in the rustle of leaves, in the pause between one breath and the next. People carry relics of memory with them. Small trinkets, charms, a worn piece of cloth from a parent long gone. Some say these objects protect them from the unseen. Others believe they mark them as visible to the watcher. Diaries of the parish note these customs, brief mentions. She hung a piece of red cloth at the cabin door, said it would keep spirits at bay. He left the plow in the field overnight, returned to find it shifted, though no one had touched it. Fact and folklore intertwine, inseparable. Each informing the other, each lending weight to the sense that the past is alive. And there are the people, strong, resilient, haunted. Men and women who rise before dawn, tend to the fields, mend the fences, cook, clean, and protect. Their conversations are careful, words chosen to avoid invoking memories too painful to speak. Yet in their eyes, the reflection of those who came before. The ancestors who walked these fields in chains, whose whispers still echo in the rhythm of the land. Children imitate these motions, learning without understanding, feeling the weight of history in their small hands and unsteady feet. The parish itself seems to breathe. The wind carries messages between the trees. The fields shift with subtle patterns that the eye only notices after long observation. A crow lands briefly on a fence post, tilts its head, watching, or perhaps simply observing the same thing the watcher observes. The smell of wet cotton, of fresh earth, of smoke from a distant fire. All of it carries meaning. A layer of reality upon another layer of myth. Records speak of incidents. Workers who disappeared overnight, never to be accounted for in payroll. Children who claimed to see figures gliding through the mist. Overseers wrote letters, some pleading for answers, some dismissing concerns as superstition. Yet folklore preserves the urgency, the fear, the respect for that which cannot be explained. The spiritual presence that watches always watches. And these layers, historical fact and folklore, exist side by side, neither complete without the other, forming a living tapestry of the parish. Even now, as the day lengthens and the sun rises higher, shadows stretch across the fields. The watcher is never far. And the stories, the memories, the fragments of paper and ink, all carry the pulse of this land, the rhythm of a place where history and legend are inseparable, and where every step in the field is measured, not just by the living, but by the unseen who still move among the rows. The records speak plainly, coldly, of names and dates, numbers and wages, of men, women, and children whose lives were measured in bushels of cotton. Frederick, a young man of 16, listed in the payroll ledger, missing his entry for 2 days in a row. Fate unknown, the clerk had written hastily, a blot of ink smudged across the page. The explanation lost, or perhaps deliberately erased. In the same ledger, Mary, mother of 3, recorded as present. Yet a footnote whispered of illness, of fever taking her child overnight. The words barely legible. Testimony of a hardship too ordinary, too cruel to dwell upon. The diaries of overseers reveal more. Dry, methodical entries. Picked 12 bushels per day. 13th missing. Sound of footsteps in field at night, no soul present. A note in the margin. The wind carries voices. Could it be them or imagination? These documents, formal and meticulous, carry the weight of silence. The absence of explanation becomes a presence of its own. The ledger does not cry. The diary does not weep. Yet the omissions, the unexplained moments, speak louder than any prose. And there were letters. Correspondence between plantation owners and distant agents. The same phrases repeated. No incident to report, except that some workers vanish overnight. I am concerned about the fields. Shadows move against the wind. The phrasing is neutral, professional, but the implication is unmistakable. Something was watching. Something that could not be measured, accounted for, or controlled. And within these human traces, the folklore grows. The stories passed down through generations speak in whispers. voices soft but insistent, telling of Frederick again. How he was seen wandering the fields at twilight, his eyes distant, his hands clutching at nothing. Neighbors swore he spoke to someone unseen, repeating phrases like, "I must go back. I must finish. The rows are incomplete." Children spoke of seeing shapes flit across the cotton, of lanterns moving without hands to hold them. Of Mary, they said she appeared sometimes near the creek, washing clothes. Yet she had not survived the fever, her face pale and sorrowful, gliding, watching mourning those left behind. The human scenes are vivid. A mother with a baby strapped to her back moving quietly through the morning fog. A man bending low to cut the cotton, sweat dripping, muscles aching. The sun a hot, oppressive presence above. And somewhere beyond their vision, the watcher moves. A figure partially obscured, hovering, observing, counting, marking. Not with malice, but with memory, preserving what the official records cannot. The eyes of the workers dart to corners, shadows that move when the wind is still. They speak little. Laughter is cautious, speech measured, for they feel the weight of what lingers. Fact layer reveals the skeletal structure. Census data, Freedmen's Bureau, reports runaway ads, payroll ledgers, each a fragment. Frederick's name appears again in a runaway notice seen near parish line. Fate unknown. Last observed at dusk. Mary's name echoes in a brief Freedmen's Bureau memo. Ill, child deceased, family concerned for safety. These fragments are clinical, cold, yet they form a pattern, a trail of presence and absence. Life interrupted, stories untold, folklore layer intertwines. WPA narratives recount how neighbors would see the fields shimmer at night. Lanterns moving, shadows bending unnaturally. Whispers that seem to call names long forgotten. He walks the rows. He checks the seams of the earth. He remembers. The watcher's presence is described differently by each teller. Sometimes a single figure, sometimes multiple spirits, all watching, all guarding, all mourning. The stories insist the watcher never harms, merely observes, and that those who notice must respect the space. Human interaction is layered with tension. Children ask their mothers, "Who is that in the field?" The reply almost always was silence, or a hushed warning, "Do not stare, do not speak." Adults moved with deliberate caution, certain paths avoided after dark, certain rituals observed. Pieces of red cloth tied to cabin doors, small charms tucked into pockets, all to acknowledge the unseen presence, or perhaps to appease it. The rhythm of daily life is punctuated by these gestures, small acts of human endurance threaded with caution and memory. Records note work output, the numbers meticulous, the human cost invisible. 12 bushels harvested by John, 14 by Samuel. Yet who counts the fear in the eyes, the exhaustion in the limbs, the silent prayers whispered to the watcher as they bend over the cotton? Diaries speak of broken sleep, of footsteps heard on the porch when none should be, of a sudden chill, and the inexplicable sense of being observed. These are the spaces where fact and folklore intersect, where the ledger's voids meet the narrative of memory. Frederick is seen again, according to oral history, walking through the fog, stopping at each row, checking each cotton boll, murmuring numbers, perhaps counting, perhaps remembering. A child glimpsed him one evening, described a man glowing faintly, like the moon had entered him, and the cotton bent to his will. Mary appears too, a figure pale and sorrowful, at the creek, washing invisible clothes, humming a tune only she knows. The watchers of the past lingering in the present, binding human experience to memory, to soil, to spirit. The environment itself reacts. Mist curls along the ground, revealing and concealing. Birds take flight, abruptly sensing something unseen. The wind carries faint voices. The scent of wet cotton mingles with smoke. Footsteps echo on paths long disused. And through all this, the human actors, men, women, children, move carefully, aware, respectful, terrified. The rhythm of life is dictated not only by labor and sun, but by the unseen gaze, by the presence that bridges history and legend. Fact layer documents sporadic disappearances, payroll gaps, medical reports, letters home that went unanswered. The boy did not return. The girl was found wandering at dawn. The ledger is silent about what happened. It simply notes absence. Yet folklore fills the gaps. Each disappearance becomes part of the narrative of the watcher. Stories passed quietly from parent to child, from neighbor to neighbor, a network of memory that ensures the presence is never forgotten. Every day repeats. The sun rises, the dew forms, the fields sway. Yet no 2 days are alike. The watcher's presence adds unpredictability. A figure glimpsed in the corner of the eye, a whisper on the wind, a shadow that moves against the moonlight. Men and women adjust their pace. Children learn to sense before seeing, every movement calculated, cautious. And the watcher counts, always counting, holding history in its gaze. And so the human scene is set, a tapestry of labor, resilience, fear, and reverence, threaded through with the unseen. Each step, each glance, each motion, a negotiation with the past. Fact and folklore, ledger and memory, present and spirit, intertwined, inseparable. The fields of St. Helena Parish are alive not merely with the toil of the living, but with the watchful eyes of those who came before, guiding, observing, reminding. Night falls over St. Helena Parish. The cotton fields darken, the horizon swallowed by shadow. And yet the mist begins to rise, curling along the rows like fingers of some unseen hand. Frederick is gone. Again. The ledger notes nothing. Payroll interrupted. His tools left where they fell. Neighbors report seeing a faint glow moving through the fields. A figure tall, unbroken by the fog. Footsteps echo where no one should tread. Fact layer records this absence, clinical, sparse. Worker unaccounted for, last seen at sunset. Yet folklore remembers more. Whispers of the watcher, of a presence moving silently, counting, observing, holding each soul in memory. Mary's daughter Clara vanishes at twilight. The creek that winds through the parish reflects only the moon. Her footprints end abruptly in the soft earth. Letters written by her mother plead for answers. The bureau notes the disappearance tersely. The word stark, fate unknown, no sign. Folklore tells a different story. Neighbors speak of a pale figure by the water-washing, invisible clothes, humming a melody that carries grief across the fields. Children awake from sleep, eyes wide, claiming to hear soft whispers calling names they do not know. The parish records recount incidents that officials deemed ordinary. A child lost for hours, a farmhand absent for days. Yet oral histories add layers. They speak of lanterns moving without hands, of shadows bending against the wind, of a man seen counting rows of cotton at midnight, and then disappearing into mist. The same ledger notes a shipment of cotton lost to weather, but some swore the crop had been disturbed by invisible hands. The fields themselves seem alive, responsive, aware, watching. A small town nearby burns, not by accident. The newspaper calls it a mysterious fire, authorities puzzled. No lightning, no sparks. Yet neighbors recall seeing figures moving along the perimeter, faint silhouettes almost human glowing faintly in the firelight. Fact layer reports casualties damage response. Folklore layer speaks of the night flame spirits that walk when injustice lingers, ensuring no wrong is forgotten. The fire marks not only a physical destruction, but the presence of memory, of witness, of vigilance. In the plantation's quarters, a young boy named Samuel disappears. He was last seen playing near the edge of the fields. A scream echoes, but when adults arrive, he is gone. Footprints trail into the fog, vanish. His mother weeps in the dim candlelight. Letters to overseers are returned unanswered. Fact layer notes the disappearance dates and official response. Folklore recalls his ghost walking the fields for years after, singing softly to children, ensuring they remember the weight of labor, the vigilance of the watcher, the fragility of life in these spaces. The watcher moves in subtle ways. Footsteps soft against the soil, shapes bending in the fog. A shadow reflected in a puddle where none should be. The wind carries whispers, a fragment of a song, a name repeated. The rhythm of counting cotton. The rhythm of lives measured in work, in absence, in remembrance. Fact and folklore converge. Every disappearance, every anomaly, every unexplainable sound is catalogued both in ink and memory. A group of men working late notice the cotton swaying, though the air is still. A figure appears, pauses at the edge of their vision, vanishes. One whispers, the watcher. No one laughs, no one questions. The stories are taken seriously, passed in hushed tones from one worker to another. From the letters archived by the Freedmen's Bureau, a report mentions a strange figure observed, perhaps a runaway or a spirit. Witnesses unsure. Folklore insists it is the latter. The watcher keeping track of the lives that pass beneath its gaze, ensuring no act of labor, no act of cruelty, no life lost goes unrecorded. Children claim to see the figure nightly. Some wake screaming. Others watch silently, frozen by fear and awe. Small charms are hung in cabins, pieces of cloth tied to doors, prayers whispered at dawn and dusk. Elders caution, respect the watcher. It counts what you do. It counts what you leave behind. Fact layer makes no note of these rituals. They are invisible to the official eye. Yet folklore preserves them, keeps them alive. The spiritual ledger of a people whose stories were too often erased. Another incident. A shipment of cotton disappears in the early morning. Overseers search the fields. No signs of tampering. Only the dew-covered stalks bending as if touched. Some workers claim to have seen shadows moving, carrying the bales silently. The ledger calls it theft. Fact layer records the financial loss. Folklore layer calls it intervention. The watcher correcting imbalance, guarding memory, asserting presence, reminding the living that the past does not forget. The rhythm of the parish continues. Each day marked by labor, by vigilance, by the subtle influence of the unseen. Footsteps in the night, whispers along the creek, glowing figures in the mist. Each incident adds weight to the story, layering fear, reverence, and memory. Fact layer payroll gaps, missing children unaccounted for labor. Folklore layer, spectral figures guiding, watching, whispering, mourning. The two layers interlace, inseparable, creating a fabric of narrative that the eye cannot see, but the soul perceives. One evening, a young girl named Lillian claims to speak to the watcher, her voice trembling, describing shapes in the fog, names called softly, numbers repeated. He counts the cotton. He counts the names. He remembers. Adults observe silently. Some nod, some avert their gaze, But the acknowledgement is there, the presence of memory, the acknowledgement of unseen guardianship over those warned and those still living. Fact and folklore both affirm this, one in ink, one in breath and song. In total, dozens of such incidents, some recorded in dry official documents, some preserved in whispers and stories. Each repetition strengthens the sense of presence. The watcher's influence is cumulative, growing with every disappearance, every anomaly, every unexplained sound. The land itself seems to carry it, the cotton fields bending with the weight of memory, the fog clinging to stalks, the air thick with remembrance. Every person in the parish moves through it consciously or unconsciously, shaped by what they see, what they hear, what they feel, and by what they dare not question. And so the incidents rise, small at first, barely noticed, then compounded, anomalies stacking upon anomalies, disappearances multiplying, objects shifting inexplicably, lanterns floating, shadows bending against logic, whispers of names carried on wind. Each incident feeding the next, drawing attention, teaching caution, asserting the unseen hand that moves the parish, the watcher, always watching, recording, measuring, counting. A ledger not on paper but in memory, in spirit, in story. The human element is central. People adapt. Families establish routines. Children learn caution. Men and women respect the unseen. Small rituals become habit. Daily life is inseparable from the spiritual vigilance. Fact layer notes labor production absence. Folklore layer preserves witness warning presence. Together they create the heartbeat of St. Helena Parish. The rhythm of memory, labor, loss, and reverence. A rhythm that persists into night, into mist, into legend. The watcher moves quietly. Shadows glide steps silent. The fog rises, falls, curls. The fields breathe under the moon. Each mini-incident adding to the cumulative weight, to the story that blends fact with folklore. Life and legend intertwined. The rising tension felt in every corner. The unseen presence shaping perception, guiding attention, reminding all who dwell here that the past watches, always. The parish lies under a heavy silent moon. The cotton fields glimmer in silver mist. Yet beneath this beauty, a tension lingers. Fact layer tells us the records of the Freedmen's Bureau, meticulous and dry. Reports of absentee workers, letters noting unusual behavior, pay ledgers with missing entries. Worker unaccounted for. Last observed at dusk. Shipment disturbed. Cause unknown. Official documents list nothing more, a void left where explanation should be. The ledger cold, unfeeling, yet pregnant with the weight of what is unseen. And the folklore, whispers insist upon something more. A presence. A watcher whose gaze stretches across the fields, unseen, but undeniable. WPA narratives recall nights when lanterns floated over the rows, shadows bending unnaturally, soft rhythmic footsteps, footsteps that counted, the cotton bending under hands no one could see, voices murmuring names of the lost, the absent, the forgotten. Frederick, Mary, Samuel, Lillian, their names echoing in the wind. The watcher remembering, always remembering. A shipment of cotton was recorded as missing one September evening. The overseer inspected the rows at dawn. Dew heavy on the stalks. Footprints of no one led into the mist. Fact layer notes the loss. Dollar value calculated. Blame assigned. Yet nothing could explain how bundles were moved without human hands. Folklore insists the watcher intervened, correcting imbalance, guarding memory, ensuring that no labor, no life, no act of injustice was ignored. Children spoke of figures gliding through the fog, some pale, some shadowed. Sometimes they appeared in pairs, sometimes alone. A figure counting silently, moving slowly along the rows, humming a tune unfamiliar, yet somehow recognizable. He knows who has suffered. He remembers what the ledger cannot. He counts those who remain unseen. Parents whispered warnings. Do not follow. Do not look back. Even adults, hardened by years of toil, paused, sensing the weight of observation, the presence of memory. A diary entry from a field overseer reads, "Saw a figure in the eastern rows at midnight. Did not approach. Felt a chill. Left without further observation." The words are measured, cautious, almost afraid to acknowledge what was witnessed. Fact layer preserves the observation in ink. Folklore preserves it in breath, in song, in ritual. The watcher is described variably, sometimes as a single black spirit, sometimes multiple, sometimes glowing faintly, sometimes blending seamlessly with the fog, always observing, always counting. A fire was reported at a distant barn. Newspaper accounts call it mysterious. No lightning, no negligence. Neighbors recall shadows moving along the perimeter, luminous shapes bending against the dark. Fact layer records the damage, reports losses. Investigation inconclusive. Folklore tells of the night flame spirits ensuring memory, marking those who vanished. A spectral ledger written in smoke and flame, warning the living that absence does not erase presence. Samuel, the young farmhand, disappeared again, this time for 3 days. Letters sent, returned unopened. His mother wept silently in her cabin. Diary notes mention only absence. No explanation, no resolution. Folklore preserves another story. Samuel walks nightly through the cotton, invisible hands guiding him, counting, remembering, ensuring that each stalk, each row, each life is accounted for in the ledger that the world cannot see. The watcher's presence grows in complexity. Anomalies multiply. Objects moved inexplicably, lanterns floating, shadows bending in ways that defy physics. Whispers of names, fragmented songs, every unexplained event recorded by memory, by community, by those attuned to the spiritual ledger. Fact and folklore entwine, inseparable. The ledger of the living, the ledger of the dead, interwoven. Lillian, the young girl who spoke to the watcher, describes a night when the fog thickened. She heard voices reciting names, some familiar, some unknown. Some feared. The watcher appeared at the edge of the rows, luminous, motionless, observing, counting. The mist swirled around her cold and damp, yet she felt no malice, only remembrance. A solemn acknowledgement of life, of toil, of sorrow. She returned home, silent. But the image lingered, etched in memory. Another night. Frederick's name arises in whispers. A ledger note indicates unpaid wages. He was seen in the eastern fields, walking along the rows, the mist thick, a shadow following. Fact layer accounts for wages and hours, nothing else. Folklore recalls his figure moving endlessly, stopping at each row, whispering names, ensuring balance. The watcher's ledger is spiritual, invisible, eternal, beyond ink and paper. The land itself bears witness. Cotton bends, mist curls, shadows stretch unnaturally, the air thick with unseen breath. Each mini-incident vanished, child-shifted bundle floating lantern compounds, layering tension, creating a palpable sense of presence, a rhythm that workers, children, and neighbors learn to anticipate, to respect, to fear. Fact and folklore coexist, reinforcing one another, shaping perception, shaping behavior. Even ordinary days carry echoes. The wind carries voices. The creek murmurs unfamiliar songs. Footsteps echo where none should tread. A figure glimpsed at the edge of vision, gone when looked at directly. Each occurrence adds weight, history and memory layering. Fact layer preserves what can be written. Folklore preserves what can only be felt. The watcher records it all, in silence, in shadow, in mist. The people of the parish adapt. Children learn caution. Parents teach subtle rituals, charms tied to doors, songs sung softly at twilight, prayers whispered before sunrise, each a recognition of the unseen ledger, of the presence that observes records, remembers. Fact layer notes labor loss and absence. Folklore layer preserves vigilance, observation, memory. The two together create the heartbeat of St. Helena Parish, pulsing with history, sorrow, resilience, and the eternal gaze of the watcher. And so the incidents accumulate. Disappearances, anomalies, whispers, objects moving, lanterns, floating shadows bending. Each event building tension, each story layering memory. Fact and folklore intertwine, inseparable. The watcher remains, counting, observing, remembering, ensuring that no life, no labor, no sorrow is ever truly lost. The fields themselves breathe, alive with memory, with spirit, with the weight of history, and the presence that bridges past and present. Night falls heavy over St. Helena Parish. The cotton fields shiver in the cold light of the moon. Mist drifts low across the rows, thick and silver, curling like fingers of some unseen hand reaching across the earth. Frederick is missing again. The payroll ledger offers no explanation, just a line smudged by water and age. Fate unknown. The official record cold, unfeeling, a void pregnant with absence. Fact layer remains silent, leaving space for memory for the witness. Folklore fills the gaps, voices carried on wind, whispers of the watcher, always observing, counting. Mary's cabin stands quiet, but not empty. Floorboards creak under weightless footsteps. Shadows stretch unnaturally across the hearth. Her eyes, pale and knowing, scanning the room. Children claim to see her at night, washing invisible garments, humming a tune that only she remembers. A mother whispers to her daughter, "Do not follow. Do not look back." The watcher preserves the memory of those lost, guarding them, acknowledging them. Fact layer may never record her presence, yet folklore insists she remains, tangible in the mist, undeniable in memory. Tattered letters emerge from archives, long forgotten. Ink faded, lines torn, worker absent, unaccounted for, last seen at sunset. Names repeated, some known, some lost to history. The watcher's ledger invisible, yet complete. Counting, observing, preserving. Each disappearance, every anomaly, becomes a mark, a notation, a sacred record. Fact layer dry, folklore alive, breathing life into absence. A fire erupts in a distant barn, mysterious. Newspapers call it inexplicable. Fact layer notes damage, investigation, loss. Folklore describes lanterns floating over the blaze, figures bending through smoke, invisible hands guiding flames, ensuring memory endures, marking the vanished, protecting the ledger of the absent. Each ember a witness, each spark a tally, warning that no life or labor is ever truly forgotten. Samuel, the young farmhand, disappears for days. A letter found years later, ink nearly erased by time. He walks, unseen. The fields remember. Fact layer lost the note. Folklore preserves the account, bridging living and spirit. Every row, every stalk, every action recorded in spectral ledger. The watcher counts, silent, eternal, unbound by mortal law. The fog thickens. Lanterns float without hands. Shadows bend against logic. Whispers of names, some familiar, some forgotten, rise from the mist. Children awake, frozen in fear. Elders nod in acknowledgement. Routines adjusted, paths avoided. Every person in the parish moves in rhythm with unseen presence. Fact and folklore entwined, shaping perception, shaping behavior, guiding attention, reinforcing vigilance. A diary entry surfaces, ink smeared, torn edges. Observed figure in eastern rows, counting, disappeared into fog. Chills entire crew. Fact layer notes observation only. Folklore records repeated sightings of the watcher moving across time, appearing at the edge of memory, touching the lives of living and absent, marking ledger invisible, eternal. Mary Frederick, Samuel Lillian. Their stories converge at night, in mist across the fields. The watcher's gaze stretches beyond one row, across cabins, creeks, barns, connecting past, present, and future, not singular, not finite. A presence that bridges time, ensuring each life, each sorrow, each labor, each absence is counted, observed, preserved. Fact layer lists gaps, folklore fills presence, and then, crescendo. The incidents converge, mist thickest along central row, lanterns float, shadows stretch unnaturally across cabins, echoes of voices, of names. We remember, we count, we are here. The watchers stand sentinel, fact layer silent, folklore loud, tension peaks, the unseen ledger complete, yet intangible. The observer records what mortal eyes cannot see, a ledger of souls, unseen, unending. Whispers names of children lost, farmhands vanished, mothers and fathers gone, Frederick counting cotton at midnight, Mary washing invisible garments by the creek, Samuel walking through mist, Lillian hearing the tune of the watcher's steps. Each act of observation, a tally, a mark, a memory preserved. Fact and folklore intertwined, inseparable, shaping the parish, shaping the living, shaping the dead. The land itself reacts. Wind shifts, fog coils, cotton bends, shadows stretch. The watcher moves silently, lightly, across fields, creeks, cabins, counting, observing, remembering. Each mini-incident compounds, disappearances, floating lanterns, shadows, whispers, layering tension, shaping awareness. The parish breathes, alive with memory, alive with spirit, alive with the ledger of the unseen. The people of St. Helena Parish adapt. Children learn caution. Adults adjust behavior. Charms on doors, prayers whispered, songs sung softly at dusk, each a recognition, an acknowledgement of presence. Fact layer notes, labor absence payment. Folklore preserves vigilance, presence memory. Together the layers pulse like a heartbeat, the rhythm of memory, of loss, of endurance, and of the watcher, eternal, relentless, unwavering. As mist thickens, as the night deepens, shapes glide across rows, touching, guiding, ensuring remembrance. The past and present merge, fact and folklore entwined, the watchers standing sentinel. Each disappearance, each anomaly, each whispered name, recorded not in ink but in breath, in soil, in spirit. Every soul accounted for, every act of labor preserved, every sorrow acknowledged. The fields themselves seem to breathe, alive with memory, alive with presence. And there, At the edge of perception, the culmination, all threads converging, the watcher counting, observing, preserving, fact layer incomplete, folklore complete, the crescendo of tension peaks, night mist, shadow whisper, and memory collide, the parish alive with the weight of history, each footstep echoing across centuries. The watcher remains, eternal, overseeing, bridging the ledger of the living and the absent. Dawn rises over St. Helena Parish. The mist thins, the cotton fields shimmer with dew, yet the weight of night remains. Whispers of what was, of those who vanished, linger in the air. The parish appears calm, ordinary, yet beneath the surface, the watcher endures. The ledger invisible, counting, observing, remembering. Families continue their routines, yet traces of absence remain. Empty cabins, tools left untouched, footprints fading in soft earth. Fact layer marks loss. Folklore layer preserves presence. The stories persist in whispers, passed from mother to child, elder to neighbor. Voices soft, hesitant, reverent, recalling Frederick, Mary, Samuel, Lillian. Each a symbol, each a memory carried forward. The land itself seems to remember, cotton bending in the breeze, shadows shifting against the sun, creeks murmuring as if recounting tales. Every visitor feels it, a subtle weight, a presence just beyond perception. Some dismiss it, some tremble. Yet all who listen carefully sense the rhythm of remembrance. Fact and folklore entwined, inseparable, a living pulse of history and legend. Archival documents occasionally resurface. Letters, diaries, ledgers, fragments of names, reports of unexplained disappearances. Historians attempt to reconcile gaps, yet some entries remain blank. Fate unknown. The watcher's ledger persists beyond ink and paper, recorded in breath, in soil, in spirit. Every anomaly, every unexplained shadow, every whispered name, preserved for generations. Music and ritual endure. Spirituals echo across fields, songs sung softly carrying sorrow and resilience. Ghost stories shared in quiet corners, tales of the watcher recounted around fires. These echoes ensure memory survives, that those absent are not forgotten. Fact layer may record only labor and absence. Folklore layer preserves vigilance, reverent spirit. Together they shape the parish, guide the living, honor the lost. Visitors to the parish sometimes pause, feeling inexplicable chills, hearing faint whispers in the breeze, glimpsing shadows where none should be. Some speak aloud, the watcher, still there. Others simply remain silent, acknowledging what cannot be fully explained. Each encounter bridges past and present, connects history to memory, to spirit. Each observer becomes part of the ongoing story. The legacy of St. Helena Parish endures. Abandoned cabins, empty fields, and faint traces of those who lived, labored, and vanished. Yet the presence of the watcher ensures that every life, every act of toil, every moment of suffering remains accounted for, preserved in unseen ledger. A balance of fact and folklore, visible and invisible, tangible and ethereal. And still, the watcher moves between the rows, along the creek, hovering near cabins, observing, counting, a constant reminder that history is never fully silent, that those who vanished are remembered, their stories alive in the mist, in memory, in the rhythm of the fields. Fact layer may be incomplete. Folklore preserves wholeness, the two together creating the heartbeat of a parish, a chronicle of survival, of memory, of spirit. As you listen, as you follow this story, remember, the watcher is not gone. The spirit who watched from the fields endures in every whispered name, in every shadow that bends against the light, in every story told softly to the next generation. The past watches, and the present listens. And now, as we close this chapter, reflect on what remains, the echoes of labor loss and resilience, of absence and presence, of fact and folklore intertwined. You have walked these fields with the unseen, felt the weight of history pressing gently upon your shoulders, and heard the whisper of names carried on the wind. You have witnessed a story that refuses to end, a ledger without paper, a memory without silence, a watcher whose gaze spans centuries. And as you step away, the fields continue. The mist curls. The watcher counts, always counting, always observing, always remembering. If this story moved you, if you felt the presence of the watcher, share your thoughts. Leave a comment. Tell us where you are listening from, what you felt in these fields. Subscribe and keep their voices alive. For history is never silent, and the watcher never sleeps.